One. We are LIVE, live on TikTok, TikTok, TikTok live. Hello, welcome to the live. For anybody that joins, engineering, industrial engineering is something that does require a lot of math, right?
Yeah. It requires a lot of math, probability, statistics, different math courses. Before I took industrial engineering, I was interested in applied math. And so then I went into industrial engineering after that, if that tells you anything about the math involved in IE. Electrical engineering, also lots of math, different types of math. A lot of Fourier transforms, differential equation concepts, right?
And I think what's interesting is that you said those transforms. Same in electrical engineering. You have a lot of math. And with a funny thing with a lot of the engineerings, like chemical, electrical, mechanical, they all end up being very, very calculus heavy later on. So especially with an electrical, you start to see that things have a lot less physics than you may think. And actually a lot of it's applied math. So what about industrial?
Industrial, it depends on where you want to go into with industrial in terms of how much physics is involved, but lots of math. You have different modeling problems. Operation research goes into deterministic, I believe it's determinist, but it's like basically linear programming, and then stochastic programming where it's probabilistic. So you don't know, like if you have a function and you have like certain inputs, like, x equals 1, y equals 2, z equals 3. There's also a branch of operations research where instead of like actual inputs, you have probabilities going on as the inputs. And that's one of the more math heavy options if you go to operations research. But there's also fields, you can always make math.
And I think with, on the topic of math, so like the integral, for example, calculus as a whole, a lot of engineering boils down to calculus, like what you'll learn in the degree boils down to calculus. What's funny is a lot of if you study mechanical or you study electrical, and then you have a friend that studies like mechanical or electrical, except the opposite of what you're studying. So you study electrical and your friend studies mechanical, or you study mechanical, your friend studies electrical, and you take like what you're doing in class and compare it. You're basically taking like the same calculus and just applying it to different subjects. So if you boil mechanical, a lot of what you see in mechanical or a lot of what you see in electrical, you boil it down to just like the math, it starts to look the same actually between some of the engineering disciplines.
And let's talk about, that's why you want to make sure that you really understand those foundational classes in the beginning of your engineering. So freshman, sophomore year, Calc 2, Calc 3, differential equations, linear algebra, that stuff recurs in your engineering curriculum. They're prerequisites for a reason. You're expected to know it. And in some of my classes, I've seen some professors maybe be a little bit more lenient about making sure the math is understood when it's brought up in your engineering, because basically you learn the math, you learn like how to do the math, but then you do the engineering, the application, by assuming you know how to integrate, right? So for engineering, you might have to, I don't know like an engineering example off the top of my head, but like you might have to integrate for something to get that engineering application. Some professors may be a little bit light to say, okay, we're going to remind you how to integrate, but there's other professors that are going to be like, you have to know this right away. And if you don't know it, you might fall a little bit behind. So you want to make sure that you definitely have those foundational science classes.
Yeah, absolutely. And understanding, like you said, the fundamentals too is really important, because if you study engineering and you like robotics, you might think this example is interesting. Let's say you are looking at this is a super simple example of like a control system, and you're looking at cruise control, right, on a car, and you set your cruise control, you're on the highway 60 miles per hour, right? So your car is going to try to be going 60 miles per hour. Well, if you approach a hill and you start going up the hill, well, maybe you're going to slow down a tad, maybe you're going 60 and you have cruise control on, but you hit a hill, you're going to slow down, right, a little bit, and then maybe you're at 58. Well, what's going to happen with the control system is maybe you're gonna overshoot a little. You're gonna try to get to 60 again, right? So you hit a hill, you're gonna slow down a bit to 58, and then you're gonna 58
speed
miles
up.
per hour, and then you're gonna speed up to try to get back to 60.
But you're gonna
you
go
might
over.
overcompensate a bit. So then your car is pushing at 62.
And
But
then
then
you
it's
gotta
going
go
to
down and you're
slow
gonna be at
down a
59.
bit, and it's going to be at 59, and then maybe it goes back up to 61 before it stabilizes at 60. So it's adjusting to the hill, right? And so that's like just a very high level example of like control systems. So cruise control. And now what's important though, and this is where calculus comes into play, basically in classical control theory, one of the main equations, and again, I'm keeping this very high level, requires the use of an integral. Because remember, what does an integral in calculus really represent? We're not just like integrating something. Real fundamental idea of the integral is it's the area under the graph, right? Mm-hmm. Area under a curve. And so if you take the integral of what is considered the error in your control system, that then gives you the error over time, the total error over time. So if I integrate, just again, in theory, from the 1 second mark to this 2 second mark, if I take the integral of the error over that time frame, I then get the total error, right, over that time. And so that is used in, again, speaking very high level, I'm not getting too into the technicalities of it, but that sort of reasoning is used in classical control theory, and you can potentially see that later on in your engineering classes. So
application driven to like meaning, you want to make sure that you understand your math classes, your physics classes as you head into engineering. As a good explanation.
I think that was
of,
one of
like,
my that was
systems, though.
We kept people on. So I see 77 people. I took a long time explaining that.
Well, it's
but we
interesting.
have
That's
more
like
people.
why, like,
So-
engineering, you understand. You're explaining how cruise control works on the car, and it's interesting to actually understand how math ties into the engineering application to something that actually impacts the real world.
So control. If you thought that example is cool, you could look it up. Control systems. You may likely
You did a
even
good
have
job.
an elective in that potentially you could take. I think it's definitely common within like mechanical.
Industrial engineering, we
electrical,
took control systems
and
too.
chemical.
Some, I think,
So-
I made a post earlier, but so
And, like,
electrical
if I-
to cover it.
If I butchered something there, I'm like talking fast and trying to not be too technical and also try to keep it very high level because there's I know there's a lot of freshmen, first year students in the live, so trying to keep it more understandable. But otherwise, we do have questions.
Yeah. Advice for. Okay, yeah, go.
This is the first one. So trying to get work experience first year, but can't seem to find anyone that will take you. So if you're looking for an internship freshman year, it can be difficult. difficult. You guys say difficult?
I thought you were gonna say definitely possible.
Difficult, but definitely possible.
We both landed internships our freshman year.
Yeah.
It's possible. I landed internships, one internship offer in the fall semester, another internship offer in the spring semester. Both came from career fairs. Both were, I would say, Fortune 100 employers. The first one kind of hovers that Fortune 100 line. But then the other, and I don't know what the current ranking is or back during the
Fortune
offer.
500.
Yeah, Fortune 500 for sure. But then the other Fortune 100 worked an internship post freshman year. You also landed 2 internship offers.
Yes. So the first offer I had freshman year was about September of freshman year, and that came from an on-campus career fair, which was, if I didn't say that was about September of freshman year, September/October-ish. Now, that said, long story short, ended up declining the offer, which then put me in a position of having to like really like work really hard for a long time to get another offer. And that offer came several months later, maybe 6 months later, at the end of March. I think it was like the last week of March is when I got the offer, maybe like 3 days before the end of March. And that was through applying online. So what can you do? Now that said, students do don't necessarily get offers as a freshman, but still end up having successful internships later on, successful full-time offers. But having an internship as a freshman can give you a decent advantage. Now, that said, what could you do if you don't get an internship, or what could you do to just build your resume? Because a lot of students will say, I can't get an internship because I have no experience. I have no experience because I can't get an internship. We always recommend, and if you've listened to the live before, getting involved on campus early. And why do we say that?
Well, that's one of the things where you can start building your college level resume right at the beginning of your college experience during freshman year. It's a great way to start thinking about what types of orgs you want to be involved in, but also start looking at different organizations and then growing within those organizations too. Where if you're involved in your freshman year and then your sophomore year, heading into your junior year, you might be looking to get into like a leadership type position, which adds another level of detail or another level of depth to your resume, because it's not just contributing onto the organization, it's leading the organization. Do you necessarily need to do that? Not necessarily. Your experiences can depend and vary based on the organization, based on the person. But if you can get involved in student organizations early, then that can definitely be helpful for getting those college level experiences on your resume sooner rather than later. Why that's important, all of this ties together with if you're looking for those internships after your freshman year. Having some student organizations, like we talk about different engineering organizations, rocketry teams, Formula SAE teams, not to call out specific organizations, not like we're endorsing one, but those are just ones that I'm familiar with through my time in engineering. Those racing teams, the electric car teams, some of those, and at least in my experience, I wasn't directly involved in them, but just observing them, seem to be very technical oriented in nature.
Yeah.
And there seems to be good experiences where industry employers, depending on what your experiences are, how you talk about them, that could be valuable for getting internships.
And what you see too is a lot of students that get involved in those technical clubs, they get hands-on experience with some cool stuff. And not to mention, great way to, I guess, make friends and whatnot on campus. But you get a lot of students do get some technical hands-on experience, which is definitely good for the resume. That's not the only way, and also you don't have to be involved in a technical student org. Thank you for the likes. You don't have to be involved in a very technical student org either. We talked about this the other day. We both were not involved in orgs that were super technical. That's also not to say don't do technical ones. It's just that it's a matter of mixing and matching what kind of works for you. If you've followed too, you know that whenever anybody asks about what major should I choose, my advice is always choose what aligns well. Choose what aligns well with your goals. Choose what aligns well with your interests and sets you up to achieve the long-term goals. But otherwise, clubs and student orgs aren't necessarily the only thing that you can do to get experience on your resume. So at least first for on-campus stuff, research is one thing. So you could try to get involved in research with a professor on campus. That was something I was able to get the second semester of freshman year, just by emailing a professor. And then next thing could be, this is more for your sophomore or junior year. If you have a professor or a class that you have taken, if you have a class that you've previously taken that has undergraduate teaching assistants, maybe you could be a teaching assistant for that class. And now one more point too on that is some schools have FYE programs, you take your first year, so first year engineering. I believe Purdue is one of the schools that sort of spearheaded that, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but I believe they did.
I don't know the history, but Purdue has FYE program.
Actually, I do believe Purdue spearheaded it, or one of the original schools to offer it. But basically, you learn engineering fundamentals your first semester, and then you build in a group project. The second semester, you build an electromechanic device.
We did a lot of projects. And
now,
I think go ahead.
I was going to wrap up my point about experience. If your school has that, if it was my school, I'm not sure if Purdue's was like this, that there were sophomore level students who helped sort of TA the class.
Yeah, mentors.
And so that could be, if your school offers that, maybe if you know your professors well from your first year engineering classes, you could try to be a mentor your sophomore, junior, senior year, right? So that's another good thing that you can do for your resume.
But let's not also the projects that we did in first year engineering. Mm-hmm. Though that also is equipped, I felt personally equipped me with some technical experiences and also teamwork experiences that going back in time, I don't know if I exactly mentioned in interviews, but I wouldn't be surprised if that came up.
Absolutely. I know for me it did, and I know even as a freshman had put that as a project. So
Like internships are not the only experience
Yeah.
you can get, because then how then can you ever get an internship?
right, internships aren't
Like-
the only. If you have like a volunteer experience, that could go on your resume. If you work a part-time job, have a part-time job from like high school, that could go on your resume if you're trying to fill the space. Even like, especially if you're a freshman, you might be able to take one or two activities from high school on your resume. I know I had like a project from high school and a club from high school, I believe, on my resume when I was getting my first 2 internship offers as a freshman. So don't be afraid also to pick one or two experiences from high school to put on your resume with the goal of over time
Replacing them.
replacing it with more recent, more relevant experience.
But again, it's always a function of recency and relevancy
Yeah.
and everything, because if you've like had that like a really great high school experience that maybe even has continued since then, you know, you always just have to kind of evaluate
it's
what
all
makes sense
balancing
to have.
game.
What makes sense to have.
But otherwise, that was a long response. Were you going to do that or?
Scrolling through these questions. Advice for landing internships in industrial engineering. I think industrial engineering is unique because there's a lot of different fields that industrial engineers can go through can go into. I know one of them, at least in my experiences at Purdue, data science is one of them. Another, you have the logistics and supply chain, which is a pretty direct, commonly known path with industrial engineering. Manufacturing processes is another one, but also consulting, in my experience, like my industrial engineering peers, I think were pretty more interested in consulting than some of my peers in like other majors. So in terms of landing internships, I mean, I think IE is a pretty broad field. The way that we talk about landing internships is there's like 3 main pathways: career fairs, networking, and applying online. And we found internships kind of, I know you landed internships through all those 3 ways. So in terms of going one through specifically for an industrial engineering student, I think it applies to like all engineering students, but within industrial engineering, I think the fields to potentially go into can be quite broad.
If you're a first year student, what we have, we're on YouTube as well at Destination Internship. And this week we're posting up videos about advice for freshmen, kind of just like this. We literally recorded them kind of like this. And there's 4 more we have recorded that we're uploading. But there's one up there right now on YouTube. If you go to Destination Internship, there's a video, it's like 10 minutes long. With advice for freshmen. But otherwise, any tips for sophomore year students? So just sophomore year students, what are some tips? I would say probably sophomore year is something that you want to try to be doing like right away. Try taking that fall career fair seriously, because if you can get companies will take you a lot more seriously as a sophomore than as a freshman. Just because you're 1 year closer to graduation. And if you're able to lock in a summer internship for that summer between sophomore year and junior year, that could be really beneficial for your long-term growth. Otherwise, another thing too, if you are looking at, or if you're open to like working a co-op, don't be afraid to start looking at co-ops sophomore year as well. That's personally my take sophomore year. And then the next question is, when should you start looking? So pretty much if the co-op thing interests you, now would be the time to look if you're interested in a fall 2020. So it's June 2025 now. If you're interested in fall 2025, like now's the time to be looking. But otherwise, if you're interested in like summer 26 internships, a lot of those will start to open up about the end of August, more than likely. End of August, early September timeframe-ish.
Question about doing internships first summer after freshman year. We both landed internships first summer after freshman year. I think looking for internships as a freshman is helpful for 2 reasons. Number 1, if you land an internship, you get that industry experience after freshman year, which can be pretty helpful for the sophomore year recruiting cycle going in with some internship, industry internship experience. The other like option in freshman year, if you're looking for an internship, is not getting an internship. However, we've both talked about how that could still be beneficial by being involved in rather looking for an internship freshman year can still be beneficial even if you don't secure an internship, because you're getting familiar with the recruiting process. You might have gotten experience going to a on-campus career fair, and that involves getting experience delivering your elevator pitch, talking with recruiters, navigating the career fair environment, and overall just being comfortable in the recruiting environment.
Yes. So like if you have if you're looking for like an internship, and this mic is, I'm just having fun with this mic, it doesn't work. If you are, what was I gonna say? Like, yeah, looking for an internship, like you said, and going through the process of applying, networking, going to career fairs, and you're a freshman, you do all that, but you're not successful at getting an internship, but you go back to school in the fall, where companies will then, when you're sophomore, and companies will be taking you more seriously because you're just 1 year close to graduation, you will be like way more prepared for those career fairs, ready to talk to companies than your peers who maybe didn't go through the process of learning what it takes to get an internship. So even if you try, you put in all the effort and you don't get an internship, you're still going to be ahead in terms of like knowing what it takes to get an internship. Imagine that, showing up to the career fair for the first time as a sophomore
Versus the third time.
as a sophomore. You're just going to be so much more comfortable in that environment. And that's what you want to be, comfortable. And then last note, on the topic of career fairs, so June right now, early June, schools will likely be hosting their career fairs in September. Now, it varies from school to school, some maybe late August. That said, go on your school's website, try to find if they have the date published. And if they do, keep that date in your calendar, and then just don't forget it, because what you don't want is to start classes in the fall and then like go through the first week of class, second week of class, be stressed out because of all you got on your plate, and then boom, find out the career fair is like in 4 days and you have no time to prepare. You want to know when that fair is so that you can spend an appropriate amount of time preparing. Because what would you rather do? Would you rather find out the date and time of the fair 72 hours in advance and realize you have to miss half of it because you have class, and then be spending like 3 hours the next 3 days preparing? Or would you rather know when it is months in advance and then 2 weeks before start spending like 10 or 15 minutes every day preparing, and then even when you realize you have class, email your professor about the fair saying you want to go, potentially get an excused absence, right, for you to go to the fair. And so the point is, being proactive is really, really important. So take homework. Go find out the date, time of your school's next on-campus career fair in the fall. If it's published, it's going to be like probably 3 months away. But that said, it's better to know know ahead of time than to be caught off guard.
All right, advice for incoming first-year engineering students. So if you're entering engineering and you're just beginning your engineering degree, what advice would we give? I think one of the first things is we said this earlier, being involved in student orgs early. So trying to find out what student orgs are available at your university and which ones you might be interested in. Career fairs can happen on campus pretty quickly into the fall semester. You just mentioned, typically, depending on the university, what we've seen around September timeframe. But at the same time, earlier in September could also be these extracurricular fairs where student organizations are up at booths and they're talking about their student organization, how to be involved, what types of activities you might be doing. And that is one way to start building those college level experiences right away. Also talking with some upper class individuals who might be able to share a little bit of feedback about what the major is like multiple years in. When I was deciding between electrical or industrial engineering, that perspective was pretty helpful.
So like what you said with involvement fairs. Every school kind of has a different name, but so if like you're an incoming student, imagine like this little box right here, right? This little box is like a gymnasium or something. Now these spring involvement fairs, like maybe, sometimes it's in a big open field, sometimes gymnasium, could be anything. are going to have like tables around it and up and down of clubs and student orgs on campus presenting like information about their club. And so what you'll be able to do is learn about, you'll be able to walk up to different tables. They'll probably be giving out free things like pens, pencils, erasers, that type of free stuff. And then also you'll be able to like talk to people in the club and see, hey, do I like these people? Do I want to join? And so if you're a freshman, going to one of those could be really important too if you're trying to figure out like how you want to get involved on campus.
And let's talk, I saw a question or comment in the comments or something. Let's talk about when to be looking for internships. Should you be looking your freshman year, your sophomore year, or your junior year, or senior year? What do you recommend?
I would say as soon as possible.
Why?
Because you want to maximize the amount of opportunity available to you. So if you start earlier, you're just opening yourself up to more opportunity.
More internship opportunities to be at the company longer, opportunities to explore different roles. I think one of the benefits of working an internship is seeing, do you actually like this company or do you actually like the role? If you work an internship and you think it's let's say you get your dream job internship after your freshman year, maybe, right? But then if you don't like that internship experience, now you know not to go down that like route. Then you kind of like have that question answered for you already. And then you start looking for more opportunities. Also, maybe you don't make a decision at that point, but the more internships you work, the more different types of companies or different functions or different roles you might have experience in, which can help advise where you want to take your career after you graduate, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you're able to get an internship earlier and potentially work multiple, that can help you learn what you like to do and what you don't like to do. And learning what you don't like to do is in some ways maybe even more valuable than learning what you like to do. Maybe one more question? Sure. Wrap it up. And then, thank you for the rose. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for the rose. We One advantage, how about of studying industrial engineering, is that it's a pretty broad degree. You can generally do a lot with it. It's a pretty broad field, industrial engineering.
Yeah, you can do operations research, which is optimizing processes, doing a little bit more on like the math intensive side. There's human factors, which is some areas you can go into that would be like user interface and designing things for humans to be designing systems for humans to work with them. I don't know if that's like the exact proper way of human factors, but kind of doing the best off of what I can recollect. There's a few different fields you could go. I kind of talked about this earlier in terms of like career opportunities. You look at like logistics and supply chain, which is a pretty direct route. Manufacturing processes, which is another direct route. But you also have the data science route, which is another like IE oriented or subset of industrial engineering. Not saying other engineers can't get involved in data science. I mean, I'm sure it's like, a portion of like another major, but it's definitely within industrial engineering. In my experience, you also have the consulting route too, because it kind of you can kind of get exposure to the business side while having a technical understanding. So a lot of it's pretty broad, and so that means that there's a lot of different opportunities that you can go into for careers, at least in my experience with IE.
So want to do this one? Let's go last.
Should you get an internship for the summer after your freshman year? So one of the benefits that I like about getting the internship for the summer after freshman year is by gaining industry experience to help with the sophomore year recruiting, right? So you just are getting additional experience on your resume that it's already an internship, already vetted by an employer, basically. Like you've gone through the interview process, you've already been selected for an internship before, and then you're going to be getting industry experiences on that industry internship. So that is one of the benefits of freshman year. Plus going through the recruiting process and knowing what that's like. So you have a little bit of like expectations and maybe some strategies for interview prep, strategies for job searching, job applications, career fairs, heading into your sophomore year.
So the thing with internships, especially if like that you may not understand, if you are a incoming student or freshman student, is that with engineering internships can be very, very competitive to get. It's not the easiest thing to get, especially, and some companies tend to be very, very competitive. So you want to give yourselves as many, I guess, at-bats, chances to try to get an internship. So at least trying freshman year is important, though it's possible, but difficult, or difficult but possible to do as a freshman.
All right, so I think we're gonna be trying to post these lives onto our YouTube channel, and so also if you have questions that we didn't have a chance to get to, you're welcome to comment those in some of our recent videos, and we'll try to get to them. Anything else?
That's about it. But otherwise, yeah, check us out on Instagram, YouTube. And if we weren't able to get to any of your questions, yeah, leave a comment. And then also, for incoming students, we do have advice for freshmen posts going up on the YouTube this week. There's one up there now. It's about 10 minutes long. The rest of them, at least the next 4, I think 3 or 4 that we got are about 10 minutes long as too. Those will probably be going up over the next couple of days. But there is one up there, so check that out. Otherwise, hope everybody has a good night. Bye. Bye-bye.